Welcome back. HSM over the past 2 years has been developing the movement Brazil presence in the successful management, which aims to divulge the best practices, best management practices of Brazilian leaders who deserve to be a reference around the world. And in Brazil, this movement, like I said, is in the second year. We have the second sponsorship of Banco Bradesco and the support of BNDES and SEDEX. This movement is present in 4 channels, in addition to HSM events such as this one, where, by the way, we have a knowledge station directed to this movement. I'd like to invite you to visit our knowledge station. It is quite nice. We have the HSM portal, where you can access a number of contents about the movement. In HSM Management magazine, we have a specific area with interviews and articles about Brazilian companies. In HSM Social Networking, we also have the presence of this movement Brazil present in the management that works. To follow this movement over the year, you can access hsm.com.br/Brazil with an S. To continue with our first day program of HSM Expomanagement, let's welcome on stage Mr. Dov Seidman. He's going to talk about leadership in the era of behavior and transparency. Seidman is considered by Fortune magazine the most successful consultant in the circuit of corporate virtues. He is the author of a book called How. Why is it that how doing something means everything in business and in life? He's chairman of LRN, a company that he founded in 1994 and has been helping people and organizations to serve in the complex legal and regulatory environment. He helps companies to foster ethical cultures and inspire performance based on business principles. He asked me to tell you that his philosophical teachings are based on the tangible work done with companies around the world. Seidman is a moral philosophy master from the University of California, Los Angeles, graduated in philosophy, politics, and economics from Oxford University, and graduated from Harvard Law School. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a warm welcome to Mr. Dov Seidman.
Thank you. Good morning. It's wonderful to be here in São Paulo. I've traveled all the way down from New York City, and in HSM spirit of inspiring ideas, all I've brought with me today is just one idea. But I'm going to ask you to consider this idea on the merits. And if it speaks to you, I'm then going to ask you to take just one action based on this one idea. Let me begin by telling you 2 stories that illustrate this idea, and then we will take it from there together. Not too long ago, I landed in Las Vegas on a Southwest Airlines flight. And as we pulled up to the gate, the flight attendant came out on the speaker with energy and passion, and she said, "Listen, passengers, we've done research in Southwest Airlines that before you deplane, if you turn around and cross your seatbelts just one over the other, you will have good luck at the gambling tables." And we thought that was funny, and we did it. It turns out that there is a law that seatbelts need to be crossed before the next plane can take off. Also, Southwest Airlines turns their planes around 6 minutes faster than their nearest competitor. How long do you think it would have taken the flight attendant to go up and down the aisles and cross the seatbelts? 6 minutes. Southwest Airlines also makes a promise: home on time, fun, no frills, and safe. And she authentically connected with that promise through how, como, she related to us. Now, I submit to you, she doesn't get paid extra for being that inspiring. There is no rule book or manual in Southwest Airlines that commands her to tell the gambling joke when she lands in Las Vegas. I bet you when she lands in Los Angeles, she will innovate and swap out the gambling joke with sightings of celebrities. She made a wave through how she related to us, a wave so powerful and so enduring that here I am in Sao Paulo and I'm sharing her story with you. That's a bottom-up story. Let me tell you a top-down story. In the University of Michigan health systems, the doctors there were being sued, like other healthcare providers, increasingly for medical malpractice. The doctor said, "Who are we? What do we stand for? What are our values? We are in the patient healing business. So let's decide that every time we harm a patient, we should simply say, we're sorry." The lawyers said, "No, no, no, you can't admit weakness and vulnerability. We have more money. Let's fight through lawsuits. Don't say you're sorry." The doctor said, "Our value is to say you're sorry." But they had another value called truth. And they decided to fight when they felt they were right and to say they're sorry when they felt they made a mistake. They started to apologize. Their lawsuits went down by 50%. Their payouts went down by 50%. It became so comfortable for them to admit mistakes that they created a corporate culture of transparency where they started to talk about other ways they could improve their healthcare services, and they increased their outcomes. They too made a wave through how they translated their values into their behavior. Many more hospitals have since been doing the same thing, and now 37 American states have passed laws where an apology cannot be held against you in the court of law. They made a wave too. Now, I believe that you agree with me that if more companies had cultures that were this inspired in their values to unleash behaviors of the flight attendant or the doctors, they would have more growth, more innovation, more impact in the marketplace, and that the world would be a better place. Will you allow me to stipulate that companies in the world would be better if there were more of these stories? Yes? Okay. I agree. The problem is what the doctors have been doing, what this one flight attendant does, is more the exception than the rule. These stories are still, unfortunately, rare. It turns out that employee engagement scores in companies all over the world have never been this low. 7 out of 10 employees are not engaged on the job. They are not bursting with passion and innovation. And 2 out of those 7 are, in fact, actively disengaged. They are subverting or acting against their company. Why is that? This is a time where people ought to be so grateful for having a job, yet they're not engaged. They're not coming out of their seat to contribute their character and creativity. Why not? What's holding us back? I think from time to time, we wind up in the grip of false ideas. I spent some time in Los Angeles, so I tend to look at society and business through the lens of movies. Many of us have seen The Godfather and probably remember the scene when the Tessio character, right before he was about to be taken for his execution, had the temerity to stop and say, "Please tell Michael I always liked him. It's not personal. It's just business." If we can create a separate space in our mind and in reality where it's just business, then too big to fail, greed is good, just do it, I don't care how, these are rational strategies for a world that is just business. Where we go to funerals, in the eulogy we hear, "What a loving husband, but a ruthless negotiator. What a caring father, but a jerk of a boss." If we can maintain this separation, then we will continue to try to coerce and motivate employees, even though we now need them to be inspired to live their values. I believe and I argue that we now live in a world that has gone from connected to interconnected, where everything is personal. Everything is personal. Occupy Wall Street, occupy Oakland, occupy Rome, occupy Israel. Are these not statements that we are personally affected by what others do? Why is everything personal? I know that we have 200 million citizens in this great country, Brazil. Did you know that Facebook has 800 million? You have 200 million, Facebook has 800 million citizens interacting all over the world. In this world, we can no longer control our life story. It used to be that every one of us had the power to reduce our life story to a resume. We could control a job interview. We would show up at the job interview and say, we are going to speak about what I put on my resume. And today, your reputation, how you do what you do, arrives on the job interview before you get there. And because you are CEOs and senior people, I bet you many of you have adopted the practice of Facebook and Google and going online to study and learn about the behaviors and character of the people you're going to meet, and you are throwing their resume away. This is, in fact, an advertisement in The Economist. You are a proven leader with passion to serve humankind, and we will go online and read about you. Don't even send us your resume. This is the world we now live in. We are not just connected, we are not just interconnected, we are interdependent. We are beginning to rise and fall, and lately perhaps more falling, together. Every one of these crises is not an end-of-life crisis, where a comet comes towards the earth and threatens to annihilate us. These are not end-of-life crises, these are way-of-life crises. Something about the way we're living, something about the way in which we are doing business is causing crisis. Now, if, like we used to, we are going to have crisis every 20 years, a boom and a bust cycle every 20 years, we probably don't have the incentive to change fundamentally. But we are no longer having crises every 20 years. CEOs used to have a 5-year plan. Then they went to a 1-year budget. I meet with them today and they say, Dov, I try to manage my company to 1 year, and then there's a bond crisis in Greece, a tsunami in Japan, a Gulf oil spill, etc., etc. We are now experiencing a lurching from side to side, crisis to crisis, greed to fear every 20 days. So now more than ever, we need to anchor ourselves in that which can protect us from lurching side to side and simultaneously propel us forward towards growth and progress. The other consequence of this interdependent world is that we have democratized. The individual is now so powerful to be a force for good or harm. One banker at his computer can lose $2 billion in London for his bank, wipe out bonuses for all of his colleagues, and send additional risk throughout the marketplace. And one vegetable vendor and a few friends armed with cell phone cameras can spark a revolution towards freedom throughout the Middle East. We are so connected that the behavior of any one person can affect so many others in ways it never could before. The Arab Spring is now being talked about as the corporate spring. Forbes just recently did a front cover story talking about the corporate spring, that the individual, the consumer, the employee has never been more powerful today to be a force for or a force against his or her company. Recently, Netflix announced a 60% price increase. Their customers got together online, had a dialogue, and dropped the stock price by half. Bank of America tried to charge $5 for debit cards. Their customers got together, expressed anger, and they had to reverse course. This is not how the world of business used to work. The question for you is, do we want to lean out of this world? Do we want to avoid exposure? Do we want to be conservative? Or do we want to think about how this world works and lean into the world and turn its conditions to your global advantage? I am here in the spirit of advantage to connect with you about how to think about this world and turn it to your advantage. And one way to do that is to come to grips with the notion that we have entered a new era do comportamento, the era of behavior. I agree that behavior has always mattered, but I believe behavior matters more than ever and in ways it never has before. And anytime you enter a new era, it's important to leave behind the thinking of the prior era and listen to Albert Einstein, who said, you can't use the same thinking that either created the problems you were in or informed your leadership and behavior back then if you are in fact in a new era. So what I would like to do in the spirit of Einstein is to ask you to rethink with me fundamentals about how to run our companies, how to lead, and how to behave in the new era of behavior. So here's my one idea that I brought with me all the way from New York. We have grown up to think that how, como, is just a question. How are you? How are we going to do this? How are we going to get from here to there? And the ultimate, how much? In the era of behavior, how is not just a question. My idea is that how is the answer. Como é a resposta. Think for a moment how you would change something about your leadership if you connected with the idea that how is your answer for the way ahead. So what I want to do with the rest of my time is rethink three things. And let's start by rethinking behavior itself. If you take out a dictionary and you type in outsell, outfox, outscore, outmaneuver, outsmart, outspend, outproduce, outperform, these are all words in the dictionary. Why? Because these words describe how we think and how we behave, which is why they've met the standard of inclusion in the dictionary. The word outbehave does not appear yet, until we make it so in the dictionary. The very idea that our behavior is the source of advantage, the very idea that we could be excellent in our behavior is not in the dictionary. Outfox, outmaneuver, outsmart, yes. Outbehave, not yet. That's understandable. How do we associate behavior? Every time I meet CEOs and senior leaders, I talk to them about behavior and they say, this is so important, please speak, metaphorically, to my golero. They say, speak to my general counsel, my head of risk, my head of ethics, because when do we tell a child to behave? Right after he misbehaves. When do we talk about good behavior? He left prison early for good behavior. We see behavior as defense, preventing bad things from happening. So managers tell their people, you keep us out of jail and leave business to us. We're just going to get it done. That was true in the 80s and 90s, in the just do it era. But in the era of just do it right, behavior has gone from defense, goalkeeping, to offense. I hope you will respect that I put up a slide of Brazil scoring a goal against the United States. But it was a friendly match. I hope to be back for the World Cup. But I want to plant the idea in your minds. What would you do different if behavior was how we scored goals in business and in life? There is a trend out there. Companies are starting to connect with this idea. Human energy is now Chevron. Dow, the human element. Cisco, the human network. Deere, human flourishing. Ally Bank says, we speak human. Delta Airlines is now saying that 1 ounce of humanity is stronger than 500 tons of metal. What these companies are saying is that in a new era, We want to have a relationship with our customers and our people in a new place. Not through our products, what we do, but through who we are and how we relate to you. Now, we all know that marketing sometimes gets ahead of the business. The question is this just marketing or is it real? Is this commitment going to be confined to the marketing department? Or will the leaders of these companies come to understand that they need to translate these commitments into corporate practices, leadership, and individual behaviors that are scalable, repeatable, rewardable, so that they add up to something? That's the 21st century, translating these commitments. Now, in the era of what? If you said, do business with us because we are excellent, and you weren't excellent, you could say, next year, we're going to be a little bit more excellent. But if you say, do business with us because of who we are, humanity, integrity, and you're not, they will say, you are a hypocrite now. You don't get to say, next year, I will find more integrity. So in this world, there's more pressure to not just say that you're about the right thing, but to do it. What is holding us back? I think you all know, as business leaders and managers, that we need to rethink our measurements. Because what you measure is what you get. We know that we manage what we measure. But what we measure is a window into what we value. It's also a window into our values. If a friend came to any one of you and said, I'm in trouble, I need $20,000, you would not have a how much conversation. You would not say, how about 15? You'd say, how are you living your life? How, as your friend, can I help you get back on track? One-on-one, we do how. But anytime we scale, at a national level, it's about spending in GDP. At the corporate level, it's how much revenue, how much profit, how much market share. And in the new economy, it's how many page views, how many page clicks. Anytime we want to do something at scale, what do? How much? Not how are we going to be resourceful, how much resource do we need to get from here to there? In the era of behavior, we need new metrics. We will not scale the how unless we measure the how. And we have to understand the limitations of over and over again measuring how much. We've recently released breakthrough research against this framework. This framework is in your books. You don't need to look at it right now. This is my way of showing you. I don't want to do an eye chart test. I'm not testing your eyesight, so I'm going to go ahead and summarize this for you. There is a way to have a framework to measure the how, where you look at the forces that shape corporate behavior and the behavior of people in companies. And basically, there are 4 archetypes of organizations that you could apply to how they do business. The first is anarchy and lawlessness. We all know what that means and what it looks like, so I will not spend any time on that. The other is blind obedience. We've seen these organizations, very vertical, rigid hierarchies, dictatorial leadership, lots of sticks, lots of coercion. Do this or else, my way or the highway. We then have gone beyond these organizations to what I call informed acquiescence, from blind obedience to informed acquiescence. The leadership style is command and control. We treat employees as rational, and we use carrots and sticks to both coerce and motivate their behavior. We have lots of policies and rules, and we motivate people to play by the rules and comply with policies, and we think about and we pursue success. The next organization is what I call self-governance. Self-governing organizations are like the doctors in Michigan or Southwest Airlines. They are rooted in values. They're more flat. The leadership style is connect and collaborate. People are not just coerced or motivated, they are inspired. And they are not just pursuing success, but significance, making a difference. We've measured this, and here's the good news. The good news is that if you are self-governing, you experience so much less of what you don't want, misconduct, and so much more of what you do want, much more innovation, much more employee loyalty, much higher levels of customer satisfaction. Look for yourself. You also get so much more receptivity to new ideas, and new ideas always lead to innovations. You experience a better reputation. Employees are more likely to recommend that their friend join their company, and much higher, materially higher financial performance. That's the good news. Values pay. They make the business efficient. They create deep connections with people and the marketplace. Values are paying. That's the good news. The bad news is that out of 5,122, and we've repeated this, an independent analysis of companies large and small, American and international, only 3% are self-governing. But we are in a new era. It's understandable that the majority would be informed acquiescence. We were surprised at how much blind obedience there still is. But we're in a new era. So I choose to see this as an opportunity to scale up self-governing companies rooted and inspired in their values so that they too can get paid for their values. What is holding us back? We found this to be a remarkable result. CEOs are 8 times more likely to observe self-governance than the average employee. What a disconnect between the people charged with getting the work done and the people charged with leading the company into the future. And the next category was HR managers and general corporate managers are twice as likely to observe self-governance. We need to figure out, why is there a gap between those at the top and those at the bottom? But because there's such a gap, my third rethink, the first rethink was behavior itself, the second rethink was what we measure and how we measure the how, and the third rethink is leadership itself. I have been thinking lately a lot about leadership. I became a father not too long ago. The birth of my son makes me think more deeply. It turns out that he responds to bribery better than sticks, and to carrots better than sticks, and it's very hard to inspire a young child. But I have time to get it right with him, but less time in the world. As he's growing up, I'm trying to get him to read early, now in German, Korean, and when he found out that I'm coming down to Brazil, he's taken up Portuguese. But in all seriousness, he makes me think more deeply than ever about leadership. How do we lead, all of us, so that when he grows up in the world, he has a boss that doesn't tell him it's my way or the highway, that says, come together, let's make a difference and get ahead in how we make a difference. Maybe he'll become a boss. What would make him inspirational? I think about that. And I'm going to ask you to think about that with me. Take a few seconds, think for a moment of a leader that you think is inspirational. Think about it for a second. I'm going to tell you about such a leader. I met him years back. I admire this leader perhaps more than any other inspirational leader. He's done something that I respect more than anybody else. His name is Crazy George Henderson. Now, I know that you think that the wave started in Mexico City in 1986. The first person to start a wave did it in Oakland, California in 1981. He had a vision of getting a stadium of 50,000 people to get up and go round and around and around in an unbroken wave of human energy to give his team a home field advantage. I've studied waves scientifically around the world. It turns out that it takes 12 to 20 people to make a wave. In the northern hemisphere, they go clockwise. In the southern hemisphere, they go counterclockwise. That's true. They only happen in transparent oval stadiums where everybody is connected, and in stadiums where one side roots against the other side, they don't happen. And I got to know Crazy George, and I asked him, how did you do it? Did you coerce people? Did you say, stand up or I'll punch you? That would not have worked because people halfway across the stadium were safe. Did you pay for the wave? Here's $20, here's $20. He didn't have enough money to motivate the wave. Were you secretive? I'd like you to stand up, but it's a secret. I won't tell you why. Think about how he got the wave to go, and you will see that he inspired the wave. He shared a vision. He said this vision is worthy of standing up for it, and he banged on his drum. And what he understands is that there are only three ways to get another human being to do something. You can coerce it. Sticks. Just get it done. Give me the report by 5 o'clock. You can motivate it. Carrots. If you do this, I'll pay you more. And carrots and sticks are external. They're stimuli. And they cost a lot of money. And lately there are fewer carrots to go around. But the third, most powerful, most renewable, and ironically the cheapest form of human energy is inspiration. The first two letters in inspiration is in. It comes from within. I'm doing it because I believe in it. I am guided by values that I think are fundamental. I am pursuing a mission that I believe is worthy of my commitment and dedication. And to make waves today, leaders need to connect with people, not by coercing or motivating them, but by inspiring them. What's interesting is that in the 19th century, in the 20th century, the just do it era, where what was the source of competitive advantage? If all you want is hard work, productivity, speed, and efficiency, I know we can all use carrots and sticks to get people to work hard and to work faster. But think of what you are asking of your colleagues today. You are asking for their ideas. You want them to collaborate with people in global supply chains who are from different cultures. Imagine saying to someone, I command you to have an idea today. I command you to collaborate with someone from a different culture. The behaviors we want today, resilience, innovation, collaboration, creativity, representing your company honorably on a social network like Facebook, these behaviors which you want cannot be commanded and you can't control from them. They can only be inspired. That is the management challenge. And all behavior comes from values. All behavior comes from values. And there are only two types of values. There are situational values. Do whatever the situation allows. You come to a situation and you ask a question. What can I or can't I do? Here and now. If I can sell you a mortgage in California because I can, I will. If you buy it even though you shouldn't, you buy it. If we take 1,000 of those and we put them together and send them halfway across the world and down the road, the pension funds in Norway collapse, I'm long gone. Everybody is doing what the situation allows. That which we can and can't do. That makes us think short term. The other kind of values are sustainable values. These values literally sustain human relationships. Truth, honesty, integrity, responsibility, hope, and trust. These are the values that allow us to have long-standing relationships. And the secret to these values is they make us think not in terms of what we can and can't do, but what we should do. Not what we have a right to do, but what is right to do. Or if you listen to Peter Drucker, who is so respected here, his legacy, management is not about doing the next thing right. It's about doing the next right thing. Well, only 3% of companies were self-governing, and the reason for that is only 4% of those companies are high in values, high in sustainable values. This is one of the reasons. What's amazing about this is that 84% of employees, and these are global statistics, say that the reason they do what they do is they're scared, they're coerced. Yet CEOs think 27% of them think that they are inspirational. And another 27% think that they are motivational. Look at this divide between those people who have the reins of power in their company and those who need to become engaged and behave like the doctors or the Southwest Airlines flight attendant. How do we close this gap? Let's look to leaders who have gone on a journey, who understand the world we're in and are changing by rethinking their leadership. I love American football. Tom Coughlin was known as a distant, dictatorial figure. His star player went on TV and called his coach a dictator. The owners sat down with him and they said, "Tom, if you don't win this year, you're out." He used to put buckets on the field and tell his players that if they don't throw up into the buckets, he will assume they didn't practice hard enough. He would fine them for coming early to a meeting if they didn't come early enough. Instead of saying, "This is the year that my life rests on. I'm going to control more. I'm going to be more dictatorial. I'm going to show my strength," he extended trust to his players and he said, "You decide how hard you want to practice. You decide what plays we should run on the field." And he started speaking to them about what it means to be a champion, life outside. And this is the year they beat New England in an upset in the Super Bowl, and he kept his job. It turns out that the last 6 coaches to have won the Super Bowl do not scream at their players. And football is the ultimate too big to fail sport. It's about being big, fast, and strong, but the teams winning today are the ones who have a culture in the locker room where they outbehave the competition off the field so they could outperform the competition on the field. And this is a global phenomenon. Spain had a crisis in the World Cup, which I know you know of. They lost game 1. Losing game 1 when you're the favorite is a crisis. Vicente del Bosque, their coach, who's known as a humanitarian coach, instead of making changes in the lineup, he put him in the room for just 20 minutes and he said, "I'm going to ask you to think about who we are and what we stand for." And he walked out of the room and the players figured out for themselves how to win the tournament. CEOs have joined this trend, one after another, and one of your greats, Ricardo Semler, and so many others are saying, "I'm going flat, I'm doing away with command and control." It's about people, it's about values. What is going on here? I love your flag, Ordem e Progresso. Can I ask you for a show of hands, who wants progress? Who wants Progresso? More revenue, growth, better life? We all want progress. That's what it's about, progress. I think you would agree that to have progress, we need to innovate. Somebody's got to do something different this week than last week, right? If you want progress, there must be some innovation, correct? Okay. To have innovation, does someone need to take a risk? Someone needs to speak up in a meeting at the risk that their boss will think that they're not so smart. Someone needs to spend some money at the risk that you might not get a return, right? If you want progress, you need innovation. And if you want innovation, there needs to be risk. When do we take risk? When do we take risk? We take risk when the company is full of trust. I'm going to say something and I'm going to trust that you're going to listen to me and not hold it against me. I'm going to spend some money, and if I don't get a return, you're going to celebrate my failure as long as I was thoughtful so that I could try again. This is the only acronym I've ever used, TRIP. I'm going to urge you as leaders to take your organizations on a trip. Trust leads to risk, which leads to innovation, which leads to progress. But the big question, how do we take the value of trust, the sustainable value of trust, and scale it throughout our organization, where like that Southwest Airlines had so much trust that she felt safe to grab the speaker and tell that joke without a manager saying, "How dare you tell a joke? We don't tell jokes here." She felt safe. How do we do it? Especially when, just like innovation is just at 4%, trust is at 9%. Only 9% of employees work in high trust environments, so not enough companies are going on a trip. I'm going to ask you the easiest question of the day, a 50-50 question about how to get more trust. We've just met. I've just decided that I trust you. According to Aristotle, who wrote about the virtue of trust, who has the virtue of trust? Me for trusting you, or you for being trustworthy? Raise your hands if it's me, if it's you for being trustworthy. Raise your hand if the virtue of trust is with you for being trustworthy. Everybody plays 50-50. Raise your hand if it's you for being trustworthy. Come on, play with me. Okay? Now raise your hand if it's me for trusting you. Pretty much 50-50. Here you are running organizations and you disagree. Where is the virtue of trust? In being trustworthy or in giving it away? That's why this is hard. We can't just talk about the human commitment. We can't just talk about trust. We need to do the hard work of translating our values into actual behaviors. I cannot pay my colleagues for their integrity. I can only pay for the behaviors that someone with integrity manifests. It turns out that the virtue of trust lies in me trusting you. Because when I trust you, I'm giving you the power to do right by me or to let me down. I'm being vulnerable. I'm taking a risk. There's actually been neuroscience research. It turns out that when you give trust away to someone, the person receiving your trust, oxytocin is released in their brain. Trust is like a drug. Whatever makes them leery and scared of you subsides, and they tend to reciprocate that trust by giving you trust in return. So if you want to go on a trip, you got to give trust away. I've studied this. A few years ago, I found a donut guy. He sold donuts on the streets of New York. He outsold his competitor 3-1. Their donut was the same price. It was equally delicious. If not, this guy could cross the street, buy his donut, and reverse engineer it and make it the same. You know what he did? He put a tray of loose change, and he told his customers, I trust you. Make your own change. I'm going to stand over here and talk to you and give you good service, but I trust you to make your own change. And they rewarded that through loyalty. And if someone else took too much of their own change, the people in line said, not here. We like this party. Don't spoil the fun. He innovated in how he related to his customer by showing them that he trusts them. In Indonesia, a country fighting corruption at a large scale, they now have 10,000 honesty cafes. Instead of more police and more controls, they are teaching their citizens the habit of honesty by letting them take food off the shelves. And instead of going up to a cashier, they are putting money in a jar and taking their own change. They have now put this in schools where they are doing this with boys and girls. The strategy of giving trust away has gone global. The rock band, Radiohead, trusted its customers to make their own change. They trusted their customers to pay what they thought the music was worth, just like making your own change. In their last album, where they trusted their customers to make their own change, they sold more albums in that album than the 4 prior albums taken together, where they put a price on it. In Ritz-Carlton, they have a new policy. Employees can spend up to $2,000 a day to solve a customer problem in an innovative, creative way. A customer comes to the hotel, the room is not available. They go, let's go to a museum together and we'll spend some time together. They can innovate, and their business is flourishing because they gave trust away. We've studied this. You can go into a company and take one team and say, listen, I'm just going to pay your expenses. And over here, you only pay the expenses when you get the signature of your boss. Turns out when you just pay, you get better behavior than when you have to get your boss's signature. Because the crime, if you will, of betraying trust is a more serious offense that people don't want to do. Especially if you discipline someone for betraying trust, is a more serious crime than just escaping the check and balance of a policy system. So I urge you to think of the ways that you could innovate in your respective companies. What would it look like to give trust away? And you could experiment. You know, we've done this with quality. Do you remember when the Japanese were winning in business? You know what the Americans did? They said, quality is an aesthetic. I know good quality when I see it. I can't measure quality. So we're going to put people at the end of the assembly line. And we are going to inspect and throw away bad quality. The Japanese bought all the real estate in the United States. They bought Rockefeller Center. We got sick and tired of losing. They were doing quality. We were inspecting for quality. They made quality part of everybody's job, part of the culture. We just inspected for it. So we declared quality is job one. We then went on a journey and we said it's not about quality, it's about speed and efficiency. And then we measured quality defects to 6 sigma infinitesimal levels, and we gave out awards in the name of quality. We are in a new era where companies are no longer saying it's quality job one. They are saying that it's humanity, values, integrity, and trust job one. And in the next 5 or 10 years, I believe they are going to get concrete. And they're going to get scientific about quality. And in the States, we learned this lesson the hard way. When the Challenger space shuttle fell out of the sky tragically and blew up, we went into NASA and we said, what happened here? We went in with a how much mindset. And we said, how many controls did they have? Checks and balances and processes. And we said they were missing some. So we put them in place. 17 years later, the Columbia blew up in the sky. And we went back into NASA. And all the controls were there. But the culture, how things happen around this place, suppressed the controls. Because humanity is stronger than a control. Humanity is stronger than a process. The question is how do we create a human infrastructure? And the way to do that as managers is not by governing people, carrots and sticks applied against rules and regulations and policies and command and control, but to get governance, Ordem, as an outcome of getting systematic about your culture, what you talk about, what you reward, what you celebrate, and how through your behavior you set an example. It's a journey to do this. Tom Coughlin was older. He had the courage to change. The other 5 coaches never had to change. They were younger. They were coming up the ranks and never used to scream. The new generation of leaders are not command and control because they are growing up in this interdependent, connected social world. And if we want to connect with them, we got to do it by connect and collaborate. It's a journey. In business, we're told it's not a journey. It's linear. Every quarter needs to be bigger than the quarter before that. But as I said earlier, we are having crises every 20 days. Life, like a journey, and business, everything is up and down, side to side. So we need to know how to manage our businesses on a journey. And journeys are paradoxical. When I used to grade student papers, I used to think about who I gave an A and a B and a C grade to. I gave Bs to people who did their job. Nice exams, they were smart, they did a good job, and I rewarded them with a B, B for basic. I gave an A to people who mastered their job. They were leaders, they innovated, they were creative, they had new ideas, they didn't just repeat what they read. But the Cs were the most interesting. The C students, in many cases, were A students who got confused. But do you notice that a C is closer to an A than a B? If you're in a C, you're actually farther along. And in this new era, instead of continuing to climb the B mountain, the journey that I'm going to urge you to go on is the journey from what to how, from outperforming the competition to outbehaving the competition, from measuring just how much, to finding a way to measure the how, from situational values to sustainable values, and from inspecting for trust to finding meaningful, powerful ways to give it away. This is the journey. And if you find yourself in the valley of C, don't be scared. Celebrate the fact that in the valley of C, you're actually getting closer. So imagine one of you saying, I trust you to innovate. And this person is inspired by you and runs off to innovate. And then they got to go get 2 signatures to get $10 to innovate. The left hand just took away what your right hand gave away. So you have to figure out how to be systematic about your leadership, or you will be in the valley of C. But you can't avoid the valley of C. We all go through it. Find ways to harmonize your leadership with your culture and with your governance, so everything reinforces everything else. Journeys always start with the individual. I wrote about David Toms because he inspired me like Crazy George. He was competing for the British Open Championship. On the 17th hole, he was in contention, and he putted the ball towards the hole. He followed his ball in golf, and he putted it in, and he handed in his scorecard, and he went back to his hotel. Turns out that there's a rule in golf, for those of you who don't know, that the ball has to be at a complete standstill before you hit it again. And in the middle of the night, he woke up, and he wasn't sure, was the ball sitting still or was it moving? So the next day, he came to the tournament, and he went to the rules tent, where there are judges who apply the rules of golf. And they watched the video together. And it was inconclusive. They couldn't tell, was it standing or moving? You know what he did? He disqualified himself. He left the tournament. He could stay, but he said he should go, because he wanted to be a sustainable leader. And he wanted to be sure that he's living a sustainable life. He's a should person. And that's the example that he says, and I write about it, that he wants to set for himself, for his children, and his profession, in this case, the sport of golf. Every journey begins with us doing the right thing when no one's looking, even if you don't have to, but because you should. So you walk up to 2 bricklayers, and you say to them, what are you doing? One of them is a what person, and he says, can't you see? I'm laying brick, one on top of the other. He thinks in terms of what? The person who thinks that competitive advantage has shifted from what we do to how we do what we do says, can't you see? I'm building a cathedral. They're each doing the same thing, one brick on top of the other. But one has a perspective of building a cathedral. The first thing we do as leaders is we go on our own journey, but the second thing is we create perspective to others. And if the perspective is one of a cathedral, then how we do what we do starts to be what's important. People say, I can't build a cathedral by myself. I need to collaborate. It's so grand, it might take longer than my lifetime, so I'm going to be sustainable. If you can paint a picture of a cathedral in terms of what your business is, then people will start to move from what they do, bricklaying, to how they do what they do, which is building a cathedral. And this brings me, as I start to conclude, to the ultimate paradox of journeys. I've studied a lot of philosophy, and the oldest paradox in philosophy is the paradox of happiness. It turns out that if you pursue happiness, it eludes you. It doesn't come. But if you do something you're passionate about, and this is a great country full of passionate people, and if you do something that you find meaningful, if you do something that makes a difference in the life of others, it's been studied and philosophically shown, happiness comes to you. I think there is a corollary in business, that if you pursue success directly, as we've painfully seen in the economic crisis, if you try to become too big to fail, you will fail. If you try to become too sustainable, too good, too valuable, too principled to fail, you won't fail. It's a paradox. If you pursue success directly, it can elude you. But if you pursue significance, like the doctors did. They wanted to make a difference in the lives of their patients. When their patients disconnected from them, they wanted to reconnect with an apology. The Southwest Airlines flight attendant was pursuing significance. She really wanted to connect with us about what her airline stands for. If you pursue significance, you create the space for success in business and in life. Jack Welch had the courage to rethink things lately. GE had a great ride and a great era of growth in the 80s and 90s, and is still a great company today. But they were known for the Milton Friedman idea. Our only responsibility is profit and shareholder return. I care about profit too. I run a company. I care about shareholder return. I have shareholders. The question is, do you pursue profits or do you get profits as an outcome of doing something valuable and significant? So recently, even Jack Welch has said that the direct pursuit of shareholder value was a dumb idea. The best statement that I've ever encountered came from Johnson & Johnson. This is their credo. General Johnson, when he was the only employee, wrote a one-page statement of the significance of Johnson & Johnson. And he said, our first responsibility is to the patients, and then the employees, and then the community. We are going to make the world, as a business, a healthier place. And then this document talked about money. And it said if we live according to these principles, our shareholders should make a fair return. He did not say will. Think of the difference. We are going to do these things and make money. We are not going to do these things in order to make money. As managers, as leaders, if you could help your people understand the difference between doing something and making money versus doing something in order to make money, you can create the space where people are inspired, because nothing inspires people more than the pursuit of significance over success. So your job in many ways, as inspirational leaders, is to inspire by rooting your behaviors in sustainable values, to create a trip by giving trust away in a way that makes sense to you and your business. And it's to pursue significance and get people to understand the difference between doing something and being successful and doing something in order to be successful. However soft or amorphous this sounds, safety once sounded the same way. When we built buildings or bridges, people said, if you want a bridge and you want a building, people get injured, they die on the job. And then we said, safety is job one. And we competed and we said, come work here because we're going to keep you safe. We did that with quality. We did that with CRM, HRIS. We have systematized every aspect of business. The only thing left to systematize through your leadership in the era of behavior is not what we do, it's not how much we get done, but how we do what we do. So I want to end where I started by asking you and urging you to think that how is not just a question. How is the answer? And if it makes sense to you, be courageous, take a step. Go to your next meeting and don't say, what is on the agenda today? But how are we going to connect and collaborate to make a difference in the next hour? Reward somebody not for how much they got done this week, but how they did it. Take away a stupid rule and put a value there. Give trust away instead of inspect for it. And above all, innovate. Be creative. Find your own way that you think will make a difference. And you will see that you will keep your feet on the ground and move forward. The competitive advantage today of how we do what we do is not just our behavior protecting us from going crisis to crisis every 20 days. It's that behavior, how we do what we do, how we engender trust, how we relate to others, how we connect and collaborate, how we operate, and how we lead, is now going to be the source of scoring goals and our competitive advantage. So the last thing I say to you in the spirit of Confucius, we all know that journeys and being in a new era and being on a journey to how, it's always the first step that makes the biggest difference. It means a great deal to me that you took the time to listen to my idea that how is the answer. And I will ask you and urge you, if the idea makes sense to you, which I hope I've been able to convey, to take just one step. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.